The Chicago Bulls finally break out of their slump and take down the mighty Celtics, while the Indiana Pacers rise to fourth in the East with a big win. The Hawks and Cavs duel as two top four teams in the East, and the Heat slip against the surging Timberwolves. We'll talk about that and the latest Jae Crowder and his trade market today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome into another edition of the Locked On NBA podcast, bringing you the latest news and scores from around the association, breaking down the big games in the league. I'm Tony East, the host of Locked On Pacers. He's David Ramil, one of the hosts of Locked On Heat, and both of those teams played tonight, so you're going to hear lots of Pacers and Heat talk today. Two teams that have had very interesting seasons, as well as big games in Chicago as the Bulls maybe save their early season with a win over the Celtics, and the Hawks and Cavs battle in a battle of two of the top teams in the East. So lots of fun games today. We talk about Jae Crowder, and his suddenly returned trade market 1 month into the season. The game of the night, Bulls and Celtics play in the United Center. And the Bulls have been really struggling, David. They have won one of their last seven entering this game, not quite getting enough from their stars who were saving them last year. Their clutch play from last year hadn't sustained. Obviously, some injuries have been dragging them down, but they thought they'd be better than this. And then just beating the doors off of last year's Eastern Conference champions, the 9-1 in their last 10 games, Boston. Al Horford had a donut. A lot of role players for the Celtics didn't quite step up, and the Bulls shot well from deep, 14 for 29 for a team that is 28th in three-pointers made per game. That was unexpected. What stood out to you about this game, David?
I think it was a rebounding edge in Chicago's favor. They controlled the boards 51-38 in their favor. A lot of those rebounds coming at the hands of Nikola Vucevic, of course, and the rebounding machine known as Andre Drummond. 25 rebounds between the two of them, leading to a lot of second chance points. Boston missing some shots. They only shot 38% from three-point range. They only shot 44% overall from the field. But Chicago controlling those rebounds, preventing them from getting extra opportunities at the basket. They only took 87 total field goal attempts. And so that's why they were able to keep them down for most of the game. There was only one lead change throughout the game. It seems like Chicago controlled the tempo early and often, cruising to an easy 14-point victory over the best team in the Eastern Conference. So it's hard to see exactly what version of Chicago we're going to see moving forward, but at least tonight they were the very best versions of who they could be.
Yeah, they've had issues, to me at least, for a lot of the season where it doesn't feel like their starting five's been perfectly connected a lot of the time, and some of that's Zach LaVine being in and out, some of that's starting Ayo Dosunmu, who didn't start for all of last season, although he did start for some of it, and Patrick Williams has had an up and down start to the year. Yeah. There are a lot of reasons that make it make sense, but for a team that has high aspirations this year, it hasn't been what they wanted. And in this game, all five starters in double figures, all of them shoot at least 40%, if not much, much better than that. And the guys you would not consider the offensive leaders, Ayo Dosunmu, Nikola Vucevic, Patrick Williams, all have crazy good scoring and effective shooting nights. That's what the Bulls needed. They needed those guys to step up and all look connected, and they did against the Celtics, who have a decent bench, but are definitely more reliant on their starting five. That's exactly what the Bulls needed. I saw some clamoring from the Celtics corner of the internet that, in a game where they just got blown out, they lose by 14. They had to their top guys for so many minutes, but that's what it takes, and that the Bulls made them do. So credit to Chicago for getting a much-needed win.
Yeah, I mean, and you wonder, once Robert Williams becomes available, these kinds of nights seem less likely to happen. Boston will only continue to get better. So I don't know that Celtics fans should be completely demoralized. Again, they're 13-4 on the season, so they've had a pretty good year so far. They've been one of the more consistent teams in a season of general inconsistency around the league. So I don't think this is necessarily a bad loss for them. It stings because Chicago has been so inconsistent, but that's more par for the course, again, around the league. I wouldn't read too much into it. And with Robert Williams back, eventually they'll be just fine. I don't think they have to worry about it. I mean, Al Horford struggled, but he's usually much more consistent of a player. I don't know if this is more reflective on a bad night from Chicago or just a really, really good night. I'm sorry, a bad night from Boston or a really, really good night from Chicago, and whether or not this might be a step for them to continue to build off of in the future. Do you see Chicago being more like their effort tonight, or more like what we've seen from them throughout the first 16 games of their season?
Yeah, I think that their total package is I don't think they're a 6-10 level team, but I think they're about a 500 squad. So,
Yeah.
I don't think they're what they are in the Celtics game typically. I mean, there's a reason they're so low on the 3-point shooting totem pole. They had a hot night. Even hitting 14 is a big deal for this
Yeah.
Bulls team from three in one game. So I think they're better than their record says, but I also don't think they're quite as good as their performance in this game. That said, their season's been strange in that of their 7 now wins, all of them are against teams that have pretty dang good records. Boston once they beat Brooklyn, right? They beat the Pacers, who have a good record. Right? A lot of their wins are against teams that on paper are good. They just haven't been able to consistently do it. We'll see where they end up this year. Let's go to the Target Center, David, the team that you cover over at Locked On Heat. Wolves, Heat. My goodness, a surging Minnesota Timberwolves. That's their fourth win in a row. And you have quite the stat on the Heat's road woes. What happened in Heat Wolves tonight, David?
Yeah, they lost their fourth straight on the road, making a little bit of franchise history as Eric Spoelstra's led teams have never lost four straight road games. So this is somewhat bad asterisk in the annals of Heat history. So the team is just continuing to struggle. They were without Jimmy Butler, without Tyler Hero. Even some bench players like Gabe Vincent and Duncan Robinson weren't available. Victor Oladipo and Omer Yurtseven, who were counted on to be spark plugs off the bench, have not played a single minute all season long. So this has just been par for the course again for a bad Heat team that is struggling to find an identity. They just haven't been very good one way or the other. They haven't been very bad either. Just kind of hard to peg exactly what they are. And they faced a tough Minnesota team that has won four straight now. And they got some incredible efforts out of Karl Anthony Towns. He led the team with 25 points. Anthony Edwards had 18 of his 22 points in the second half. He really caught fire there at the end. Jaden McDaniels hit some big shots for them also. And honestly, I think Miami just really screwed the pooch a lot, especially late in the game with some costly turnovers, some costly fouls there. Just counting on guys that they're not supposed to. And we made this point when we recorded Lockdown Heat earlier that this season feels like a house of cards for Miami because they've just been counting on guys that are two-way players, G League level players, or even undrafted guys to have all these outsized expectations for them or performances. And you can't count on these guys to be consistent producers over the course of an NBA season. They're not star level players, but yet here they are. You know, Jimmy Butler's missed a lot of time. Tyler's missed a lot of time. And given that, now all of a sudden Max Strus thrust into the starting lineup. Caleb Martin thrust into the starting lineup. You're playing your 19-year-old rookie, Nikola Jovic, and he started the last 5 games, and he's going to be in and out. Bam's missed time too. So it's been really tough to gauge what Miami has done, but you can't really take away any credit from Minnesota either. Miami screwed everything up. They really blew it late in the game, but Minnesota played a pretty consistent game overall. And then they got some big performances from Cat and from Anthony Edwards. Rudy Gobert, not particularly good though. So that experiment continues to be a difficult one to pin. He only had 4 points on the night. Karl Anthony Towns fouled out, but it was Rudy Gobert who wound up hitting some clutch free throws late in the game. Again, really, really unexpected performance from him. But yeah, I don't that partnership just does not seem to work very well. But they do lead the league in whining for foul calls, so that's a good thing.
Luka Doncic would like a word on that statistical category.
I mean that duo, Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns together. I mean that's a twin tower of wine right there.
I'll see them on Wednesday and let you know if I agree with your assessment.
Oh,
Yeah, look,
you'll agree.
outside perspective, just looking at the box score, the fact that the Heat lost by 4 with the bench of, and for those of you listening who have no idea what we're talking about, this is the entire Heat bench that played in this game, right? I'm not just pulling names out of a hat. Of Haywood Highsmith, Jamal Cain, and Dwayne Dedman, I'm surprised the Heat didn't do a little better in this game with such a rotation. You know, obviously injuries are a part of the NBA season. You got to do what you can, and to be within 4 of Minnesota is impressive with the team they had, but it's going to be tough to win that game. And the other thing that stands out to me looking at this box score that is kind of blowing my mind. The Heat win the rebound battle, win the turnover battle, shoot and make more free throws. They have more points in the paint. They are about even from 3 and the free throw line. So the mid-range game, is that what Minnesota hung their hat on? It's hard for me to figure out exactly where all these advantage points are coming from for the Timberwolves.
Yeah, I think that was a big part of it too. They just got to the rim a lot too. And they were able to. I don't know. It's just you look at this Heat team, and again, counting on these guys, only 8 players available to them tonight, and most of those undrafted guys. Uh, I'm trying to think now that I think about it. Was it Kyle Lowry? Was he? Yeah, he was drafted. Bam Adebayo drafted. Nikola Jovic drafted late in the first round this past year. Again, a 19-year-old rookie. Aside from that, I mean, you're playing 5 undrafted players like Jamal Cain, Dwayne Dedman, Haywood Highsmith, guys that weren't even in the league last year. I mean, it's tough to string any kind of consistency there. But yeah, I mean, again, kudos to Minnesota for figuring it out. They did a good job. It actually was a much better effort from Miami in contrast to their blowout loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers on Sunday. So it was the second night of a back-to-back for them, but they were tired. Maybe that explains some of the fourth quarter losses. But again, not taking any credit away from Minnesota.
Well, boy, do I have a lot to say about the fourth place in the Eastern Conference Indiana Pacers. But I believe, David, you have something you would like to say first.
Absolutely. This show is brought to you by Turo, the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, whether you want it, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. You can browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the United States, UK, Canada, and coming soon to Australia. You can book a spacious SUV or a minivan for a family road trip. You can get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from point A to point B. You can test drive that new electric vehicle that you've had your eye on to see how it fits your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms and conditions and exclusions do apply, but forget about boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo. That's Turo.com.
Welcome back into Locked On NBA. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day, free and available on all platforms wherever you're listening now, Odyssey app and to YouTube as well. For your second listen, check out either of our shows, Locked On Heat, Locked On Pacers. Lots to dive into with those two teams who have had opposite seasons compared to expectations so far, which is my lame segue to talk about the Indiana Pacers, who this might be the last day this holds true because their upcoming schedule is brutal and other teams are going to play. The Pacers are fourth in the Eastern Conference. If the playoffs randomly started after 16 games, they'd host a series for some reason. And they just beat the doors off of the Orlando Magic. Now, their start of their season has been impressive. Beating the Magic is not so impressive, but there's still a lot to discuss with this team because the big reason they're exceeding expectations is that Tyrese Halliburton's been one of the best 15 players in the NBA this season. Maybe even higher or lower number than 15, 10 even. The case could be made. I think NBA's MVP ladder has him in that 15 to 10 range. Another fantastic game today, right after winning Eastern Conference Player of the Week. 18 points and 14 assists. Didn't even play the fourth quarter because they were beating the Magic by so much. He easily could have had 20 and 17 or something like that. He had 9 assists at halftime in this game. He's the driving force that makes this Pacers team awesome. He finally figured out the balance of being an awesome passer, right? He was averaging nearly 10 assists per game.
14 assists.
Last year, he's the only player in the league averaging more than 10 assists per game right now, David. Last year, all 4 players who averaged 9 or more assists were all-stars. Halliburton blowing those numbers out of the water this year. But he's found the scoring aggression that he never had in Sacramento. Never really had the chance to show playing next to guys like Fox and Harrison Barnes, who had the ball and would try to score. Even with the Pacers last year, they still had Malcolm Brogdon. They still had other guys who wanted to do their thing. This year, they said, it's you. You're our guy. Make it happen. And he certainly has. And that's how they've been able to start off 10-6. They've had an easier schedule, I think. And even the tougher games they've played, you know this, when they played Miami, there was no Jimmy Butler, for example. When they played the Raptors, they were missing about half their team. A lot of the stronger opponents they played the Nets when Steve Nash was still their coach twice, have had easier context for those games. They're about to learn a lot about themselves. 7-game Western Conference road trip, which is just brutal for these teams, plus Minnesota and Brooklyn this week. But, right now, with the way Halliburton's playing, with Mathurin being an actually good player as a rookie, with Miles Turner having the best month of his career, the Pacers are looking like an actually good team, David.
Yeah, I mean, Halliburton, 14 assists on the night. Fantastic passing from him. So, I mean, that's part of it, right? Is that now he's got the ball in his hands. He knows how to distribute. He's finding that balance with the scoring. He's being more aggressive, as you pointed out to. but you don't get those assist numbers if you don't have other players scoring at a high level
Right.
too. So who have been like the unexpected contributors to scoring aside from Matherton and others? I mean, who else has been the complementary players to step up what Halliburton's been able to do?
Yeah, Miles Turner's having the best month of his career despite only 10 points in this game. And I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, but he had 8 of the fourth, the entire reserve unit in, and Miles Turner, who stayed in the game until conveniently he got 10 and was immediately subbed out for another big man. But he's having the best month of his career by a mile. Buddy Hield's having another resurgent year. His efficiency's way up, and it's mostly that he's hitting 2-pointers at a high level. He's not
Yeah.
taking very many per game, but he makes almost every single one that he takes, and Halliburton giving him the ball is obviously a big part of that. And a lot of the reserve guys have stepped up. Aaron Nesmith just had a career high. TJ McConnell just had 20 points today. Mathurin's a deadly scorer already as a rookie. Jalen Smith occasionally has big games. I basically just named their whole team. But that's what he says. He says, I have these assist numbers. I obviously would like to be one of the best passers in this league, but I can't do it without these guys making the shots I threw them. He actually joked after this game. He said, I had 14 assists. Would have had more if Buddy had made his shots because Buddy Hield was terrible in this
Yeah.
game against the Magic. So in this individual game specifically, the Pacers knew the Magic would switch, attacked the rim like crazy, and Orlando did not have the offensive firepower to keep up. They have no healthy guards. It's impossible for them to play sustainably like this. But the Pacers in general are just good. They've got answers for what every team has thrown at them. They're 7-1 now in the month of November.
And yet, you're not optimistic about their future as they embark on a long road trip. We were talking about this before we started recording, that this might be more of a mirage. It's great for Pacers fans. It's something to be optimistic about for a long-term future, especially because of Halliburton's performance and the fact that you're
Definitely.
getting all those great contributions from everybody else. But you don't see this group necessarily as being a lock for a playoff seed anytime soon.
Yeah, I think they're going to get much closer to the plan than everybody thought. They might even make it to that stage of whatever you call the postseason, but their
Right.
defense is still concerning. It's been much better this month, but they've played, Charlotte, Houston, Orlando twice, Miami without anybody. You're going to have good defensive rating numbers playing against the competition they've had. Once they get through their road trip, I think we'll have a very good idea of who the Pacers truly are. And if they're still over 500 come then yeah, heck yeah, call me a believer at that time. The other big game of the night, and the reason the Pacers moved into fourth, is because 2 top 4 teams before these games tonight played in the Hawks and Cavs. 2 fun teams who are trying totally new things this year. DeJounte Murray in Cleveland, DeJounte Murray in Atlanta, Donovan Mitchell in Cleveland. What'd you see in this game, David?
It was actually a lot closer than the final score would reveal. It was at about just over 2 minutes left to play, and the Cavs were only up 5 when there was a turnover and a Osman breakaway, a fast break opportunity, and then John Collins, who's been the subject of trade rumors for the Hawks, wound up trailing him down and fouling him. And after a review, a lengthy review, it was revealed that that was a clear path to the basket foul. So it was 2 shots plus the possession. And then Osman wound up hitting a 3-pointer from the corner. So what was a 5-point game turned into a 10-point game. And of course, the Cavs wound up winning by 12. But just a fantastic back and forth battle for the most part between Trae Young and Darius Garland, who was really electric for most of the first half. And then Mitchell late in the game. Great performance. I had questions about whether or not Mitchell and Garland would be able to fit together, but games like this really kind of put those concerns to bed because they were just fantastic. Garland with 26 points, 29 from Mitchell. They got great contributions from Mobley. Jared Allen was his usual steady self, too. They don't even need much from their bench, but Osman wound up providing 23 points on the night, too. So this was a really great win for the Cavs, who, again, were able to establish dominance pretty early on and establish it late throughout the game, too.
Both of these teams have been pretty good this year. There's a reason they're both top 5 in the East. And I think these teams both show the value of something that is emerging as a guard trend. And Steph Curry showed it for years. If you can pull up on your own and create your own 3 and you can pass, it's really hard to find an effective way to slow you down. You can't run them off the line because they'll find an open teammate. You can't close out slow because they'll just bury the shot, right? It's very hard. Trae Young's been doing this for years. But when you
Right.
have 2 of them, Murray may not be quite that level of shooter, but both of these teams
Not
have
tonight, he
guard.
wasn't. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Both of these teams have guards who can do that, right? Mitchell and Garland standing out to me. They both had 9 assists, right? They can move the ball well and get their teammates involved. That just makes your offense hum, and I think both of these teams are benefiting from that.
Yeah, I mean, I should point out that Murray struggled for the field, 4 of 17, one of
Bad
four from
time for
three
that
point range.
example.
Yeah, no, but I mean, but you're absolutely right though. Like this is what I was looking forward to in watching this. Even as I was trying to watch the Heat, blow the game against the Wolves, I was tuning into this game because I really wanted to see those two guard sets between both teams, kind of how they would play off of each other. And for a while, I was optimistic that would be pretty excited because Young and Garland seemed like they were trading baskets early on, but Murray just never stepped up to the challenge. And Mitchell, of course, wound up leading all scorers with 29 points, so he absolutely did. But you have to give credit to the Cavaliers. They play some pretty tough defense. They've got a really big front line between Mobley and Allen, so it was a nice group there. And it was a really interesting matchup, and I'm glad you brought up the fact that you can pair two guards that might not necessarily seem like a perfect fit on paper, as long as they can do things like create their own shot and also make shot opportunities for others as well. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's been working. And by the way, credit the Cavs for doing something I felt was obvious before the season, which maybe doesn't last. They have no wings on their team. They have a billion guards and a billion centers, but very few wings. Lamar Stevens is a wing-sized dude. They put him in the starting five, and they get back to their winning ways. Turns out having forwards in your lineup is, in fact, helpful, David.
Yeah, I should say that considering Caleb Martin is starting a power forward for the Miami Heat. So yes, it's always good to have that kind of balance and size there. But it also helps when you have the kind of prolific scoring that you get from Garland and Mitchell. They are, I mean, is it possible that both of them will make an All-Star team? I know it's early in the season, but do you think both of them right now? I mean, I guess you could say that Halliburton is probably a clear All-Star also. But I mean, do you see Garland and Mitchell and both of them having All-Star level seasons?
Yeah, you could probably make a case for about 25 guys in the Eastern
It's
Conference.
a little too early, I guess. Yeah,
It's very tough at this stage. Well, yeah, one huge game is very influencing on All-Star ballots. But yeah, I mean, you have to make the case for both well over 20-point scorers who can set up their teammates. And Garland they both made it last year, right? And I don't see any reason that they've slowed down. That doesn't mean they should be All-Stars by default, but yeah, they both got very good cases.
Well, we'll talk about some of the other games in the association later in the next segment before we talk about Jae Crowder being involved in several trade rumors and where he might wind up and what his impact would be in the second half of the season. But before we do that, just a reminder that this show is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps to find the right people for your team faster and for free. When I've had to hire people in the past, it can be so time consuming between having to sort resumes, conduct interviews, find the right person, get them back for a second interview, just find the right test to analyze what skills they might have and what you bring to the table. You don't have time to waste like that, especially in today's market where you're competing for every opportunity. You want to save time. You want to find the right person that can help build your business and help get you over the hump, especially as we're nearing the holidays and so many other people are competing for those extra dollars. This saves you time and helps you make money. You can add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and the experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading candidates. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply.
Welcome back into Locked On NBA. Thanks for making us your first lesson today and every single day. Check out Locked On Sports today for your second listen. Go beyond the box score and learn more about the biggest stories in sports from the Locked On Podcast Network every single day on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. Couple more games in the NBA tonight that we're not going to go as deep in because a lot of games without stars tonight in the league.
Yeah.
Very unfortunate. I saw this one in New Orleans, and just to bring this up, the Warriors have already played both of their games in New Orleans. None of their stars played in either of them. If you're a Warriors fan in New Orleans, that totally sucks. But hey, the punishment was there. They lost by 45 to the Pelicans. I have no take on the Warriors without any of their star players. The other game that I thought we weren't going to have to talk about because Paul George didn't play, Clippers-Jazz. The Jazz look awesome this year. Clippers look mediocre. Right now, the Clippers are up 6 late in that game, so credit to the Clippers for getting it done. And unless you have an opinion on the dameless Blazers losing to Giannis and the Bucks, I think we can gloss right over those games and move on to talking about Jae Crowder.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's move on.
We talked about
Speaking
John
of the
Collins
Bucks
on NBA yesterday with Brad Rowland from Locked On Hawks. That's the other big trade murmur news in the NBA. But Jae Crowder's been a headliner for a while, and he was the guy right before the season that sort of started off all the trade stuff by not reporting to training camp for Phoenix when he learned that he would not be starting for Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson's currently hurt, so hey, Jae Crowder, if you want to start, I know a Phoenix team that you can start for right now if you happen to be listening. That said, still no signs of that slowing down. And Shams Charania of The Athletic reporting over the weekend. This was now last Friday. That has started to heat up again. Apparently, there was a close deal to be done for Crowder that did not end up happening last week. And the two teams with interest said to be the Milwaukee Bucks or Atlanta Hawks. First of all, David, do you feel like the Suns need to jump on this? I mean, they've got injuries on the wing. They just have this good player on their roster just sitting around. It's kind of an interesting situation.
Well, I guess I have not heard Brendan Clean on Locked On Suns lately, but my assumption is that relationship is irreparably broken there. Once it was clear that he wasn't going to be part of the rotation or not the part that he envisioned, and also on a contract year. I remember when Jay was with the Miami Heat for that half a season when they entered the Orlando bubble, a fantastic part of that run, and yet one of the things that he was looking for was stability. That's been the consistent hallmark of his career, is that even when he signed that deal with the Dallas Mavericks and then he wound up getting traded to the Boston Celtics, then to the Cleveland Cavaliers, then to the Utah Jazz, he at least had a contract to keep him through. He was going to get his money. And so he's always craved that stability. It doesn't seem like he's going to be joining Phoenix anytime soon because he wants to be able to get that last, what's likely to be the last contract, a multi-year deal of his NBA career. I'm coming at it from a different angle when I think about Jae Crowder, and I get this a lot from, again, a Heat team that is looking to add a quality power forward and could bring a guy like Crowder back, and yet even a recent, I can't remember now who it was who reported it, from somebody from I can't recall exactly who it was, but said that the Heat had been involved in some trade talks potentially for Jae Crowder, but were unwilling to include, of all people, Max Strus in a potential trade. Like, this is what they don't see Jae Crowder's acquisition as being significant enough to include an undrafted former two-way player and Max Strus in a potential deal there. And I know Strus is a starter, a guy who can shoot close to 40% from three, even though he absolutely did not tonight. I just think that everybody's looking at Jay more in what he represents or what he's capable of as a stretch four, as a guy who plays ostensibly some kind of defense on occasion. But we're kind of overrating these. And again, from a Miami perspective, and that's all I've got here, is that, a lot of Heat fans see him somewhat nostalgically through the lens of what he was able to provide in the Orlando bubble when he shot scorchingly hot against your Pacers, against the Milwaukee Bucks, and then cooled off in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Boston Celtics, and he was a non-factor against the Los Angeles Lakers in finals. So you kind of see him as being a guy who can shoot threes and can play defense and can switch and do all these things, but he doesn't really do that even as well as a lot of people expect him to, and he doesn't do much else other than that too. Great locker room guy, great guy that you want to have on your roster, but what are you willing to trade for Jae Crowder at this point in his career? Like, there's just not a lot of value in what he brings back, and you don't want to give up something of value either. So I know the reported deal was for Grayson Allen, I think, going to the Houston Rockets, and then Eric Gordon going to the Phoenix Suns. So I guess for the Suns' perspective, they're getting a shooter, a guy who could play, some guard position there, and fill in the box score on occasion, and a veteran that they could bring off the bench, I guess. I just don't see any other team really jumping forward and saying, we need to acquire Jay, and we're willing to give up a quality player in order to do so. And Phoenix is kind of just holding tight there. They're not willing to give him up for nothing, and that's kind of ridiculous. I feel like we're kind of building towards the point where, since this trade fell through, nobody's quite desperate enough to pull the trigger on it, and Phoenix isn't either. I kind of get the feeling that they'll just wind up buying him out, and then you kind of wonder whether or not he'll sign with whatever team provides the best opportunity for him to win a title.
Yeah, the interesting thing reported was the two interested teams. And I jumped to them because of what you just said. He's chasing the role so he can play a lot and get paid again. So you look at the Hawks, who he would not start right now, but if John Collins was traded, maybe he would. But that's a hold up there because it's not like the Hawks can just get him and then trade John Collins later. There's still the same problem for Jae Crowder then on a new team, right? It's just
Right.
transferred the issue. And John Collins for Jae Crowder would be a very stupid trade for the Hawks to do without additional compensation. So that's tricky. The Bucks, he would start right now, right? They've been starting Javon Carter and Grayson Allen, but eventually Chris Middleton will return, and then they'll have their Giannis, Brook Lopez, and Chris Middleton front line, and then maybe he wouldn't start again. So it's like maybe he would start for the Bucks, or he'd do this PJ Tucker role where he's still playing a bunch, and that makes sense. But it's hard to find the team that is good and that would want him, and he would start especially now that the season is rolling and everybody kind of knows who they are. So if he's willing to accept like a sixth man type of role, I think that might expedite the process. But then if you're trading for that level of player on the wing, you're not going to give up a ton. And so the Suns, like you said, are probably hesitant. He's in a contract year that makes his value lower. There's a lot of factors at play that make this tricky, but the trickiest one's that he's just not playing at all. So the Suns have all this pressure to figure it out, but there's no perfect situation.
Yeah, again, I mean, I hate to say it because it feels somewhat homerish of me, but it feels like Miami might be the best situation for him, and they don't have the
He
roster
would start
spot.
on the Heat, right? He probably would.
He would start without a doubt. Like I mean, again, you're starting Caleb Barton, and his energy, the spark that he provided off the bench last year, has been kind of wasted as a starter. He just hasn't really fit in positionally. You do need a guy like Crowder, but you're not willing to trade anybody on the roster for. Like Duncan Robinson, that salary, as much as you might be willing to move it, he doesn't get the deal done. You don't want to include another secondary player or a draft pick in order to acquire a guy like Crowder. If he gets bought out and then he has his choice of team, he could come back to Miami. He's from South Florida. It makes a lot of sense. There's a connection there to a former Marquette alum and Jimmy Butler. But I don't know that they're good enough to compete for a title this year, so that might be a factor. I mean, I guess there's other teams out there that might be looking for a guy like Crowder if he's bought out and becomes a free agent. I just don't know exactly what that team might be. Again, because of those factors that you described, that he's looking to play, he's looking to start, and he's looking to get paid. I don't know what team offers that, especially at this stage in Jay's career. So it just seems like a lack of self-awareness about where he is in this current place in his mark and his career and what happens next year and beyond.
Yeah, it's fascinating because he's definitely good. Like he's a good player, and so if he eased off his, I don't know that he's like if I get traded, I still have to start kind of deal. But if that is the case, because that seems like a big deal to him in Phoenix, if he eases off of that stance, like he's a good wing. A billion teams want that. Teams that aren't even in the NBA want that. They can't obviously trade for him, but that's what basketball is now. So the market, I'm sure, will speed up at some point, but it is fascinating all the dynamics at play that make this one extremely hard to predict. If you want more, way more nuanced details about this, David already mentioned it. Brendan Clean from Locked On Suns will have everything for you covering the Suns that, despite everybody calling them the bad vibes team before the season, myself included,
Yeah.
are still pretty dang good at this whole basketball thing. I'm on Twitter at TEastNBA. David's there at DRamil13. We'll see how much longer we can even say that as a thing coming out of these podcasts while Twitter is still around. Tomorrow, Jake Madison, John Corrales coming at you with the latest from around the league on Tuesday night here on Locked On NBA. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening and making us your first listen every day. I'll see you tomorrow.